Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today we are going to be talking about VulnDB. I'm your host, Vandana Verma. I'm part of the DevRel team here, and interestingly, we are running Big Fix. I am sure that every time you meet me, we talk about it because it's a month-long event that is started on Valentine's Day, 14th February, and it's going to run till March 14th. So for 1 month, we still have a few more days to go. If you've not registered, you should register. Let me go ahead, share all those details before even talking about the VulnDB week. So here we go. So Big Fix, what you can do is you can just go to this website, bigfix.snyk.io, and you can register yourself. I'm sure like you'll have questions how I can register if I am not registered here. So once you go to this website, bigfix.snyk.io, there is a registration here. Click on register to start fixing, and it'll come up with three things: first name, last name, and your email. Once you do that, you just click on submit. You will get a magic link and you'll be signed up. Now, once you sign up and you start fixing, you'll be part of the leaderboard. And the interesting bit is that it is a fixathon where you would be getting really good prizes as well, really cool prizes. So even if you fix one bug in your code or the code repositories you support or open source repositories you support, open source projects you support, or if you want to help out some people who are not able to maintain the project, as a volunteer you can support that and you can fix the bugs there. You can make a pull request, and as soon as it's fixed, you would be part of the leaderboard and you would get prizes. So first three prizes would be very amazing: a VR headset, a wireless speaker, and an Arduino starter kit. But everyone, for sure, if you fix it, you'll get a limited edition Big Fix t-shirt, which I do want it. I have all these purple, orange t-shirt, but this one is totally incredible. So you can win that. And let me go ahead and share a little bit about leaderboard as well. So Big Fix leaderboard, let me go ahead and show you what it is. So here are like we wanted to fix 200,000 bugs. Here, if you can see, it's more than 300,000. So we want to reach 500,000 now. Let's go ahead and make it happen. And whosoever fixes the more bugs, they'll be shown here and you'll be getting all the details here. But if you still have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to answer, or any of us who from the team. You can check it out on the website. All the details are there, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Now, coming back to our VulnDB week, what I want to share here, if you've never attended this VulnDB session, what it is, Snyk has a vulnerability database, and what we do is we keep updating those vulnerability databases with all the latest vulnerabilities, including the information around it, CV, CWEs, the scores. We also evaluate our own scores. Now here, the the main thing is like how it is different from any other vulnerability databases or NVD database. So we are building on top of others as well, and we are analyzing the vulnerabilities which are part of um, our ecosystem. As in, if you are a developer and you are scanning a vulnerability, we realize that this is really an interesting vulnerability, a new vulnerability. So okay, let's go ahead and start talking about it. Never ever any client data would be shared with anyone, but the vulnerability, what it is, should be shared with people so that everyone starts getting to know about it. So this security.snyk.io, here if you see, there are multiple platforms listed, and there are multiple vulnerabilities: buffer overflow, XML, SQL injection. So every week, you see that there are different vulnerabilities every day. Every few hours you would see that the work is being done. We also manage Node.js vulnerability disclosure platform, wherein people report the vulnerability, and we help through the whole process where we fix it and we update the ecosystem. Any vulnerability, if you're using Snyk, you'd realize that if it's trending on Twitter, you would get a highlight, okay, this is a new vulnerability trending on Twitter. Or if even if it's an old one but it has been revived, you would get to know. So where exactly you can check it, you just need to click on view all list of vulnerabilities, and you would land here, security.snyk.io/vulnerabilities. Let me just give the link. So you can go through this link here, and you would be landing into the right page. The beautiful part of your of this platform is that you can actually use filters. So if you see that I have a lot of filters here where I can see all the vulnerabilities which are there. I can see specific application level vulnerabilities like Cargo, CocoaPods, Composer, Go, and Maven to NPM, whatnot. All the vulnerabilities are there, and there are certain operating system vulnerabilities which are impacting certain languages, applications. So you can see them here as well. So if you see, I'm able to actually do that. Now if you like Go, or if you work on Go, you would be able to click on Go, and specific vulnerabilities would be listed. You can search via package name or a CVE as well, that what are the vulnerabilities which are there. Now let me go ahead and click on all vulnerabilities. So if you see, these vulnerabilities are very latest from 8th March, from server-side request forgery to denial of service, SQL injection, XXC, all of them. Now let's start one by one and talk about it. Now my favorite one is to start off with high severity bugs. So we'll start off with the denial of service, we'll talk about SQL injection, we'll talk about XXC, we'll talk about buffer overflow. And today I have something interesting to show you. So today I want to talk a little bit about the Snyk top 10 as well. I am sure a lot of you would not know what it is, or if you would know, I think I would like to share more information about it. That what is Snyk top 10? So what Snyk did was that Snyk came up with top 10 risks from a developer perspective. So what we started doing is we started evaluating the code base and the kind of vulnerabilities that were coming from different kind of languages, code bases, and we collated the list after analyzing the data, and we listed all of them. So here is the link of the Snyk top 10. So we're going to be discussing at length about them today. And if you have any questions about that, you can actually reach out to me anytime, or you can please post your questions here or queries here. And we want to know more about like what kind of more vulnerabilities or different vulnerabilities from your experience you have seen, because these sessions are not there to say okay, these things are there. Most of the things you would know, some of the things I will add it from my experience, some of the things we would discuss as part of the session. So I would like to know your stories as well. So I would like to invite you all also as part of the show, where you discuss about some interesting finding that uh, you got and you reported, and how it was fixed, how was your experience, and what that vulnerability was all about. So we want to know about that as well. uh, some of you are here right now, and some of you, I'm sure, you will go you'll listen to it later. So I would say, if you are listening to it later, then still you can reach out to us so that we can actually invite you on these sessions. This one is part of the big fix edition because we are still in the month and we are trying to fix the bugs. We are part of the hackathon, fixathon. So it's part of the beautiful big fix project. And we will keep doing such activities so that you can be part of it. You can share your insights. We share our insights here. Now let's talk a little bit about denial of service. Let's land here. So here, if you see, most of the details are listed because it was affecting Moodle package, and with a certain version, it's specifically to Moodle version. But in general, what is denial of service? So, in simple words, denial of service is where the system is uh, unusable. So denial of service is something where system is, you are sending, or an attacker is sending request in a way that system becomes unusable, or system gives you an access where you are not able to make changes, you're not able to do anything, or system will give access to attackers where they can modify the information. Yes, that can happen there as well, where you wouldn't even know and the attacker can able to um, change things. So denial of service, in simple words, is type of a cyber attack which is designed to prevent users from accessing certain systems or website or network. So denial of service can happen on systems, website, network. And in denial of service attack, the attacker floods the targeted system with traffic or data, which is very overwhelming for them, where it reaches its capacity, which leads to crash or become unavailable for the people who want to use it. For example, you use a social media site, and you want to use it whenever you want it, right? Because you're uploading your data, you're using your mails and whatnot. But suddenly, it becomes unusable when you really want to send a critical email to someone. Would you like it? No, we don't want it. And that's what we are trying to avoid. That with denial of service, the system becomes unusable. So uh, it is not, I'm not a happy person. So that's why we need to concentrate on these attacks, and we can actually work on these during the coding itself while we have proper validations in place. And there are many type of denial of service attack, but if we talk from a code perspective, we want to make sure that we are secure, we are not becoming part of such attacks. So please make sure that you have rate limiting, you have validation in place, because that's very very important. And there are two common type of DOS attacks, especially from a code perspective. I will say that high CPU or memory consumption, which you can see here, or the crash. Like those are like simple ones. And these two libraries, they are mentioned for example because they actually are very common packages where it's being done. But this can happen in any package if we don't have the right kind of validations in place. Maybe whitelisting, maybe blacklisting. But let me tell you an interesting aspect about blacklisting. Once you blacklist, then people can still bypass it. Now, let me tell you about a story about it. So, one of the infamous denial of service attacks in the history happened in February 2000, where a group of hackers launched the massive distributed denial of service from multiple systems to one systems, or multiple systems to one website, where high profile companies became part of it. Now, this attack, which was coordinated by a group called Mafia Boys, used a botnet of compromised computers to flood the targeted websites with traffic. For example, I have a system and you have a system. Now, your system is vulnerable, so I make your system as a slave, and you don't even get to know. Now, then there is another person whose system is vulnerable. I leverage the vulnerability and I make them. So now I'm using multiple systems. They don't even know that I'm controlling them, and start launching the attack on a particular website. So I am instructing all of the systems to attack one application, and that becomes a big problem. But when somebody figures out, okay, from where the attack originated, it will be your system. So at it peaks, what happens is the attack uh, can overload the system, and it becomes crashed. Now, with this particular attack, which I'm talking about, the attack was estimated to have generated up to 1.5 billion packets of data per second, and that's huge number, making it one of the largest distributed denial of service ever recorded. It also caused an estimated loss of 1.2 billion dollars. Now that's a big number. So the people was eventually caught and sentenced to prison, but then the attack served like a wake up call for the organization that it is important. And this denial of service attack is also part of Snyk top 10. Now, another vulnerability is one of my favorites because this is one of the first vulnerabilities I found was SQL injection. Now, with injection, there's a beautiful aspect. If you know about OWASP top 10, which is Open Web Application, not, oh, no, 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 Open Web Application, not, it's Open Worldwide Application Security Project, comes up with top 10 list. Now, Snyk top 10 list we've specifically curated for developers and development environments because we wanted something for the languages as well. So here, with OWASP top 10, injection has always been on top, like the number one, topping the chart. But in 2021, when the new list came out, which is the latest one, it rolled down to number three. And the interesting aspect with that was when it rolled down to number three, we thought, okay, now injection is going to go away. But just then we were assuming it. In December, so this came out in September, and in December, there was a big, or I would say major remote code execution or kind of an injection happened using Log4j. Now, Log4j became so massive that every company, every organization, everyone was talking about it. I was on a vacation and still was getting, oh, everyone was talking about it on Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere. Why? Because that was so massive that everyone was thinking whether we are using that version or not, whether we are using that particular package or not, and wanted to understand. Even Snyk came up with a beautiful, awesome Log4Shell repository where we put in the list of videos shared, audio shared, YouTube links shared, Twitter discussions shared. So we actually create that repository not just by Snyk, but by everyone who shared those content. We tried to make a repo and we tried to share. So let me go ahead and share that details with you, which eventually meant that SQL injections are here to stay. They have been there when we were kids. Now we are grown up, they're there, and they're going to be there when we are going to grow old. So this is one of my favorite lines because I feel that these vulnerabilities, we don't want to see it anymore. We want to see more, but vulnerabilities, it's fine. But then we don't want to see the same repeated vulnerabilities. So let's start working towards making sure that we have proper validations in place, parameterized queries are there. We have characters which are not supposed to be going inside the database. We are validating them. So, in simple words, let's validate anything and everything. We don't want someone to delete the data on our system. We don't want someone to exfiltrate the data on our servers because of some flaws, which we can fix in the code itself. Now, it's our responsibility as a security person to educate developers. And similarly, developers know the environment really well. So it becomes even more interesting if we work together, we can fix them as soon as possible. And if you want more details, they are listed here. Even let me tell you an interesting aspect if you want to learn more about these vulnerabilities. So Snyk has Snyk Learn. Let me go ahead and do that. Here, what Snyk Learn is, Snyk Learn actually talk about two learning paths. I am so happy. Till last week, I could see OWASP top 10. I can see Snyk top 10 as well. So I'm going to talk about Snyk top 10 today. Only Snyk top 10 as part of the learning curve. So here, let me copy the link and I can show it to you. So last week's my friend Sonia and I did this beautiful series for OWASP top 10 with our friend Patch. And today I'm going to be talking about this. If you see here, denial of service was one of the first things that we discussed. Then we talked about remote code execution. And if you see all these vulnerabilities, now I have to talk about deserialization of uninterested data, but if you see, SQL injection is also part of it. Let's click on SQL injection right now. So SQLi, everything about it, what it is, what about this lesson, and fun fact, there even Star Trek movie, the whole group talked about SQL injection. And yesterday we had a beautiful movie night where all of our teammates from every part of the world sat together and watched one movie .net together or net together. And I think such kind of things should be done where we get to know about uh, the hacker movies and how especially security people are being part of such hacker movies as well. Trust me, that's happening. Now, if you see, if you let me come back to this again, because I got so this is something which is very very interesting for me and it very close to my heart, and I can see Snyk top 10 being part of the lesson, so it's totally incredible. So if you see SQL injection in action, you can see that here. Now let's talk about it as a developer. How would you understand? So if you see, there's a startup.io login, there is a username, there is a password. That's how it works, right? When you land to a website, it asks you to log in. So let me log in. It logs me in. Then there's a strange input error that you see if I want to change something. So here, instead of password, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a single quote with evil password. Let's copy it and let's see what I can make. Or I say, I don't know, single quote, or 1 equal to 1. If you see this, this is a statement which is always true, right? It's a universal truth that 1 equal to 1 is always true. And I'm crafting a message, I'm crafting a query and sending it to the server because server understands the query. But if you think from a perspective, if server sends me anything, can I accept everything? No, there could be a problem. So which means servers should validate whatever an external person said, even a developer, even a security person, even any user. Servers should think could be malicious. There are malicious people out there. So when this log 1 equal to 1, the password was this, whatever was the password. Here, what happened? I was able to log in with this query. Was I supposed to log in? No, which meant that I was able to bypass the login. So if I'm a normal user, I can log into my boss's account. Should happen? No, it should never happen. And this has happened where we were evaluating, not here, not a Snyk, but in one of my experiences where we were testing one of the application where it was supposed to be an appraisal application. So user, lead, manager, and then the hierarchy was going on. I was able to log in as a lead. I was able to log in, upgrade my privileges to manager just by putting in some queries and playing around with it. Remember one thing, not these queries work every time. This is not so simple. This is to explain it to you, and that's why we use cheat sheets. I have a cheat sheets of over 5,000 queries for putting SQL injection, for command injection, for OS command injection, or code injection. So there are so many. So cheat sheets are there. Snyk has beautiful cheat sheets. OWASP has cheat sheets. So I would say go check out those cheat sheets. They are very, very important. They are very, very useful for anyone. So I'm just going to put the cheat sheets series here so that you can actually take a look at them. Now coming back to it, here we could realize, now if I want to delete the database, here I have a username because I got to know username. Then if say I don't know, single quote, drop table credentials. I know that there is an injection issue at the backend. And if I'm able to drop the tables where the credentials are there, if you see, the credentials are dropped and this email does not exist. Strangely, the person was able to do it. And trust me, I've gone through that where one of my friend actually deleted by mistake the person's school, the person kid's school database, because the person was trying to get the access to the results and that was not happening. Some SQL errors were there. They were trying to delete some SQL errors and suddenly, boom, the database was gone. It was a big trouble. It was a big hassle. So we should not do it. And that's when, if you look at these details, we can fix it in the code itself. Now, coming here, there is an email parameter, there's a password parameter. It's using get, and it's using information from the user. I am a malicious user as well. Maybe it could be going in the URL as part of the get parameter. It could be going as part of the body with the post parameter. But then it's taking input from the user. And remember, not all the input shared by user is safe. So users should always be considered as malicious from the get go. Let's think whatever anyone thinks, but yes, this is how it should be done. So it can be manipulated. Now, another aspect is that how do you fix it? All the details, all the lists, if you see here, we have mentioned what are the mitigations, why this happens, what are parameterized queries. And if you want to know more, there's a Snyk OWASP top 10, then there's a blog post by our team, then there is a SQL injection cheat sheet, which you can go through if you see, which we have created. Let me go ahead and put it here in the chat box. So Snyk has some really, really amazing checklists for the community, which you can go through. And now coming back to the Snyk top 10 list, here, if you see, it's PHP and it's in Go, where the all the things would be similar, just that the code snippet changes because the way the language is written. Then there's C sharp, there's Python, Java, JavaScript. Any language that you work on, you can start learning those exercises, how exactly input parameters are being handled, how exactly the validation is done specifically for those things. Now, coming back to my lessons, here, learning path, Snyk top 10. If I want to know about more details, I can go through each one by one. Now, let me go ahead and explain a little bit about a prototype pollution. Looks like today we would not be able to cover everything because it's give me an opportunity to do more. It gives me an opportunity to come back again next week and talk more about the Snyk top 10. So I'm going to come back again next week to talk about different kind of vulnerabilities. So today we talked about denial of service, we talked about SQL injection, and now we're talking about prototype pollution. Now, what is a prototype pollution? Again, this is a kind of an injection attack which happens in JavaScript. Now, while it happens in JavaScript, it gives an attacker might control for object properties. So objects are being used as part of JavaScript, and we can inject this uh, in the code. So it's a type of a vulnerability which can which happens in JavaScript application, which uses the prototype based inheritance. Now, in JavaScript, where objects are created by defining a constructor function. Now, when the constructor function is there, we then add the properties and methods to its prototype object. Now, when we add that, what happens is that attacker can modify the prototype object of that construct function, and which actually pollute it or inject or modify the properties. So, in simple words, prototype pollution happens when an attacker is able to modify the prototype objects of that construct function, which allowing the attacker to inject or modify the properties and methods of all objects created from that constructor function, which can lead to wide range of security issues from remote code executions to data exfiltration, data theft to privilege escalation. Now, another example of, or one example specifically, example of that prototype pollution is when attacker modifies the prototype object uh, of a commonly used construct function called um, object or array, which means that the behavior would be slightly different. For example, object was supposed to take certain function, certain details, and suddenly I'm able to change that object to an array and I'm feeding multiple information. Where what we can do to avoid it, we can actually properly sanitize the input. Now, you must be thinking, I'm talking just about sanitizing input. Trust me, half of the job is done if we are sanitizing the input properly. And that's why everyone say shift left, because this is so important that we start shifting left. Now, let me go ahead and share the link for the prototype pollution here. About the lesson, we're going to be learning about the vulnerable API. We're going to be learning about JavaScript prototypes and how prototype pollution works and how we can fix them. Now, if you see in action, there's an API, and it's a kind of a storytelling that we have done here so that you can understand it. That there's a vulnerable API, and we're going to be using it to escalate the privileges. So here, let's go ahead and copy it. So this is my API for my startup.io. I'm going to copy this in the terminal and see what happens. So I'm trying to curl some information, and I'm trying to use this database sanitization expert. What happens is that when I requested the details, there's some information that came to me. Now, here we get a JSON request or JSON response from the data, which is stored from on the users about the user. So here I know what the user is, Robert. There's a surname in tables, and when we get that information, I want to know more about it. So here I'm trying to get more information. So here I know that there is a startup.io which has user, and there's a user called 1337, right? And about that user, I got the name. Now I want more details. So I want to know about the role, what kind of a role it is. And user role is just user. Am I supposed to see their information? No. So these APIs should have certain information, not more than needed. Now what I want is, I want to play more about it. I want to see that if I can change that role to user, from user to admin. Can I? I should not have. I should not have access to it. Let's try and copy paste this information and post it here. Now, what we did, we tried to define the role as admin for this particular user, and we tried to get the role as well. So, what we got? Role user. Okay. Remember, this adminhood is not over yet because we are not admin yet. We're still getting some information, but not the exact kind of information that is needed. So we're going to do more information, more probing here. Here, we're going to be defining this parameter proto, and we're going to be defining the role as admin, and I am going to try and get more information. Okay, let's see what happens, because here we injected or we polluted the parameter. We added a proto parameter, and let's see what happens. If you see, now the role is as admin. Was I supposed to have admin access? No. Am I able to change it? Absolutely. Now, I'm not going to stop here. If I'm an attacker, I'm not going to stop here. If I'm a security person, I'm just going to take a screenshot, I'm going to show it to people and say, let's fix it. But then, if an attacker gets to know about such details, there are further attacks that can happen. Now, here, let's go ahead and try to override some more information. Okay. Here, I'm going to use this curl request where content type is application JSON, and I'm going to post this information using this parameter proto, and I'm going to use this particular string, and I'm trying to add 2 byte meat to the first byte. Asks, are you ill? It's just a random information, and trying to see what happens. Can I override some information on the server? 500 internal servers, so there's an issue. Now the API is down. Interestingly, can I play around with some more information? Now, API is down, API is unusable, I can do much more details. Am I supposed to do it? No. So remember one thing, that when we are using these APIs, these prototypes, we should be validating it properly. That's the first thing that we should do. Now, if you want to know more about it, here is what is a prototype in JavaScript. Explained very well, written by the team. And here is a normal JavaScript object. And here we are trying to add more details to it, or add more attributes to it. So you can actually run all these information. You can try and experiment with it. So these exercises specifically we have curated for you, where you can try it yourself. For me, as a person, I don't understand if I don't play around with it. I'll be forgetting the next moment. Trust me, we've gone through so many trainings and we forget about these things. The best way is to learn by exercising it. So, here, what you can do is you can actually exercise them. But if you don't know how to mitigate those issues, how to fix those issues, it is as good as not knowing them. So, let's learn about that, how we can fix them. So when we are using such open source libraries, we need to validate them and we need to keep them up to date. There are many vulnerable libraries we use at times. So we use components which are vulnerable. Now, how do you know how you are vulnerable? Keep a list of it. That's why everyone is talking about uh, software bill of materials, keeping a tab on those libraries. Very, very, very important. And if we don't know how to fix it, there is information out there which you can take help from. So today, what we've done is we've talked about denial of service attack, we've talked about SQL injection, we've talked about prototype pollution. Now, let me come back here and talk about one more vulnerability before we wrap up the session. And here, let me close all the unnecessary tabs. I'm going to close all of these there, here, and I'm going to go back to my learning path. And in learning path, I'm going to go Snyk top 10. So we have done this denial of service, we have done remote code execution. Let's talk about deserialization of untrusted data or insecure deserialization. Now, serialization is a kind of a system or a mechanism where an application data is transformed into a format. For example, you send the data, and there's like step by step process where the data is going inside the system. And another interesting aspect about insecure deserialization is that when the data is serialized, if I pollute that data and send it to the server start taking the data, saving it, and when I request it back, the deserialization process will happen. So first serialization is happening, and then deserialization when I'm trying to take out the input. Now, during deserialization, the malicious code starts executing. So, interestingly, making the system making the system maybe unusable or polluting it. And this specifically happens in JSON or XML format commonly. So, deserialization is the process of converting the data back into object. So I am feeding server with objects, which is serializing, saving it somewhere. Then the deserialization happens. And insecure deserialization can allow an attacker to execute third party code or arbitrary code or carry out malicious actions which a person should not do it. How that happens? By manipulating the serialized data in a way when the application does not expect, but just do it because there were not proper validations. Now, what could be a good example for that? When an attacker could modify this data to include malicious code or pass that to application like, okay, fine, I'm sending you anything and everything, do it, or pollute the application. Now, here, there's a game within a game. So, you discovered an arbitrary code bug in some software and unsure what to execute. So, here, there's an event where if you read this article, where a 2014 speed running event where actually somebody executed that. And this deserialization is like so common that it became part of OWASP top 10 at one point in 2017. So these are beautiful examples of how it's being done, how you can play around with it. Like Dungeon Monkey is like a game. You want to play around, you can play around with the APIs, and you can parse some information. So, how you can understand this? You can start by sniffing the network traffic with the following payload, and then maybe it might give you some information. So, here it gave me some information where by that information I was able to get out more detail from the server. Now, coming back, when the deserialization happened in the human readable format, I can make changes in it. The interesting bit is the mitigation. Again, the whole mitigation lies against the validation. When your serialization of data happens, let's validate everything that comes inside it. That's very, very important. Now, let me put the link here so that you can try it yourself. Um, Let me tell you one thing what I like about learn.snyk.io, because it's crafted in such a way that every detail is listed here. All the resources, all the research that's being done by different people, how they have executed that research, what are the things, what are blog posts which are written by us at Snyk. All those details are also there. I have to tell you one more interesting aspect about Snyk Learn, that with Snyk Learn, it's a beautiful journey where you go through all these 10 issues, and once you go through them, the learning path gets finished, and you see that okay, it's completed. So you can track your progress as well with everything. Now I'm going to stop here. I would like you to go through the Snyk top 10, and I would like you to know more about it. In our next episode, we're going to be discussing three more vulnerabilities. So today we discussed about denial of service. We talked about remote code execution, but we didn't do the exercise. So we're going to do this exercise, and I have some wonderful vulnerabilities to show. And I have Log4j set up on my system. We actually learned about deserialization, but we're going to revise everything. We learned about SQL injection. We learned about prototype pollution, and there are few more bugs. There are five more ones that we should go through. Insecure temporary file. We have directory or path traversal. I'm going to showcase demos which are here. I'm going to showcase the demos on the applications that we have on our systems. Then there is a privilege escalation, which is part of OWASP broken control as well, broken access control vulnerability as well. Then this one is very interesting. Regular expression denial of service, which you're going to check, and null pointer difference, null pointer dereference. So for you to exercise the first five, we can go through it. And if you have any question, please do drop me a note on my LinkedIn or my Twitter. My DMs are open, or feel free to drop us an email. We would be very happy to get to know. Now, before concluding, I would like to show you a little bit about Big Fix again. I'll tell you why, because this is my favorite. This is something which we have been working towards, fixing as many bugs as possible on the internet to make sure that we have much more secure internet. And let's start working together and fixing them. Now, I don't see any questions here on the chat part. If you have any, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask for any questions that you might have. But remember to join me in my next stream, which I'm going to be sharing the details shortly with you. We're going to be announcing on uh, Snyk Twitter handle. If you don't follow, please follow Snyk Twitter handle, and we would be sharing the information there that when our sessions are there, and we would be live streaming on the YouTube channel. So if you don't follow the YouTube channel, you will you should follow. You get all the details there. Let me share the Twitter handle, and I should share the YouTube channel as well before missing out on it, because we did this OWASP top 10 series, and our friends are sharing all the beautiful videos on the Snyk YouTube channel. And even this session is being streamed there. So some of you who are on the session and you want to know that where the video will go, it will be on the Snyk YouTube channel. Do follow it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today in Snyk VulnDB Week, the Big Fix edition today. Do join me in the upcoming session as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was wonderful to have you here. Thank you. Thank you so much. And see you soon again.